working directory user src app folder, and then we are actually installing like npm install mongodb. Okay, so node app.js, right? So here, like what we are actually doing. So, and this is my compose file. So yeah, I have like MongoDB server and I have like Mongo Express server, and I have this node image. Like, so what I'm actually trying to do, so I'm trying to build it from the current context, like current directory. So whenever like I specify dot, so it picks the Docker file from the current context. Okay. So in this case, so what is happening? So let me do Docker Composer. Delete that image. Excuse me. This is the image, right? I'll delete that. This is delete, right? So I'll do Docker. Intention invalid type. Okay. So I just wanted to show you without volumes. Docker Composer. So you can see that it is building my image like node image, right? Okay, so it got built. And then if I see Docker PS, so this is my node image, right? Docker pxcc -it container name /bin /sh. So you can see this is my app.js, right? Nano app.js. Okay, so Nano is not found, so I need to install Nano. So before this call, like I was having a call with Preeti, and then so we had an issue. So usually what we do, apt get inst update, right? So in order to install, so this is what we saw in our first classes, like apt get update. Since we are using like Alpine package, so we don't have like apt get available in that particular distribution of Linux, okay, of Ubuntu. So for Alpine images, so you have something called as like apk install. Okay, apk update. Sorry. So this is the package manager for all these Alpine images. So you're clear about Alpine images, right? So if you remember, like initially, like I was mentioning, like Alpine images are the minimal sized images, like they are just like 5 MB images.
Yeah.
So apk add nano. So it got installed. Nano app.js. So you can see like I have this console doc, right? So what I'll try to do is like I'll update. So I want to update this particular package, this particular file. So I want to print like log. Okay. But in order to, I mean, so this doesn't actually get reflected on this image immediately. And when you do like what you can actually do in this case is like, so either like you can actually use the Docker copy command, which we saw in the starting sessions, like, and then copy the file into this particular container. But that is temporary. Like whenever this container gets deleted and then you're actually recreating another content again, like your file is actually lost, right? So it doesn't actually help you out. Okay. So this is where like volumes come into picture. I'll do that to you now. How these volumes actually help us out. Now I want to host this particular. So I wanted to have I'm creating a volume, and then what I'm actually trying to do is like I'm just trying to point like my all the code which is present in the current directory into this src folder. Okay, on the Docker container. And then what I would like to do is so then this is my working directory. Like I am just pointing this working directory. Okay, let me do Docker Composer. So it is not able to find this MongoDB module, MongoDB node module, right? So why is that happening? Like, let's see, like Docker PS. This is my container. So it is continuously restarting. Okay. So it is not able to find this container. So in that case, like what I can actually do is, so along with this current directory, so I can also point something like this. Okay. So I can also, create a volume inside the container. So it is just like copying the code from this particular folder. Like if you see our Docker file, like our node modules are getting installed in app user src app, right? So I just wanted to mount this volume also. Not find the module. Let's do one thing like so I'll install this as global minus G. This is the command, right? npm install MongoDB minus G. Okay, so it is taking the old image. So in order to have the new image created, so I need to give like Docker Composer hyphen hyphen build. So now it is actually trying to build. So instead of taking the old one, so it is trying to build the image.
I think minus has to be before MongoDB.
Okay, so we should put like minus before this. Here, the one. Still, it is not able to find this. Okay, so I'll do one thing like so I wanted to debug this particular case, like so why it is happening, right? So what I'll try to do is like so instead of so right now what is happening, so it is continuously trying to, so I have this node image and then it is trying to execute this command like right node app.js. So how do I override this command? Like so if I wanted to override this command, so So I don't want this to be executed like, okay. How can we actually do that? So we can actually use, so with here like we have two things, like one is command and the other one is like entry point. Whenever like we have command, so any command like which we pass through this Docker run using that option, so it is getting overridden. Whereas with entry point, like you're not able to override the command. So I mean, so it is getting appended like any command like which you use. So in order to override that, like what we did, like in the Docker run, so we had this option, like so entry point option. So using this entry point option, so we were able to override that particular entry point. But since in our case, like it is just like a command, right? So I can simply, what I can simply do is like I can override this command using this option. Okay. So this is the command, and then I want to execute like bin/sh. Now let me. Still restarting. So it is getting filled. Like, so how I need to get into this container, like somehow, like in order to debug this, in order to understand the problem. So I can clearly see that like this MongoDB, it is not able to find this MongoDB node module, right? So I just wanted to see, like I installed it in a global mode, right? So I just wanted to see why I'm not able to.
Like maybe in the Docker file, our working directory is user src app, and in that directory we are doing npm install. But in the compose file, we again changed it to src.
Okay. So again, like we changed it to SRC, like, okay. So okay, so my node modules are actually present inside this app directory, user SRC app directory. And here, like yesterday, like I overrided this working directory to SRC directory. So now I need to copy, either like copy these node modules, or at least like, so I need to just change directory, like volumes directory to something like this. Copy to this directory, my current file to this directory. Then I'll also remove this. Still, it is not able to find. So let me do one thing. Instead of running this command, I'll just remove this once and then. So I'll try to understand so why what is happening, how these volumes are actually getting bound. So how do I get inside this container? It is getting killed immediately. You want to see the content. One thing I can actually do is run it in the background mode. So I just shell start. this is not the lowest. You're trying to understand like what I'm. My intention is this is actually getting killed. So somehow like I wanted to get inside this container. So it is a short-lived container, right? So you are executing this previously this app.js file and then it is getting killed. So I wanted to get inside this container and see what is happening. So you have any suggestions?
Can we do package.json and get added the MongoDB and then npm install? Then the MongoDB can be working. I did it. That way it worked good for me.
Yeah,
No.
I used Node application. So in the package.json, we added Node MongoDB.
Anna, we can make use of sleep method అన్న ఇన్ఫైనైట్ స్లీప్ 10 seconds అలాగిస్తాం కదా సో అక్కడ స్లీప్ ఇన్ఫినిటీ అని పెట్టే డాకర్ ఫైల్లో కమాండ్ సిఎండి స్లీప్ ఇన్ఫినిటీ అని
Sleep.
అదే ఇన్ఫినిటీ అని INFINIT కాదు
Sleep.
సిఎండి అని పెట్టు
It is still exciting.
Like in my case, when I created volumes for the SRC folder, I created volumes for the node modules folder as well.
So here like you created the volume, right? So you're actually copying like okay. So how can you just like come again like Priti, like how did you actually do that? Like I'm just copying this current directory from here to here, right? So in my case, like I don't have like node modules installed, all right?
Then along with that, I have created volume for user SRC app slash node modules.
One sec. So initially, like I just wanted to get inside this content, but this is not actually working like bin bash. So when I override it with bin bash, so it is not actually working, right? Let me try few other options. Okay. So this is something new, like basically like my problem statement is something like this. So I'm not able to. So my intention is something like I wanted to build this container and this particular Docker image. So it is actually running. So it is supposed to run this node app.js file, right? So what is happening? So somehow like my container, so it is actually, so using the Docker compose, what is happening? So it is actually getting started, but since it is not able to find any of these node modules or anything like that, so it is actually getting killed. Okay, this is throwing an error and then it is getting killed. So you cannot actually get inside a container which is actually killed, right? Stopped container. So only you can get inside a container which is actually in the running mode, right? So, but how do I get inside this container? So I just wanted to see if I have, if the code is getting copied into this particular folder or not. And then, so if my npm install -g is actually working or not. Okay. So somehow like I want to get inside this container and try to understand what is happening. Okay. So what another option what I tried is like, so basically like in the commands, basically when we are running the Docker container, so what we used to do, so we used to have Docker run, so container name and then interactive mode -it, and you used to give like, so bin bash or bin sh. So that is the reason why like I tried an option of command, like trying to override this command option over here, but still even this is not actually working. So in order to get inside this container in this scenario, what I can actually do is, so I can basically use this particular command like docker compose run, and you can give this node name, like only whatever the container like you want to get inside. So you can use this container name, and then you can provide like sh option. Okay. So this way, like it will only start that particular Docker container and you'll be getting inside this container. Okay. So where is my file app.js? So this is my app.js, but I still don't have. Uh, so this is my working directory. So, and I have this, where is this node modules? Like these node modules, so they're not actually present. And that is because, so I'm actually overwriting the file. Like, so since I'm copying the current directory into users src app, directory. So it is overriding this existing things. Like, so when we did like npm install, so basically like it maybe like it installed all these commands like node commands over here. Uh, So is this a command, like this is the right command to install a package globally?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Not able to identify. So maybe this is actually causing an issue. This is an empty package.json file. At least like, so this is actually running. So I'll be getting an issue, I assume, like, because like my node content, yeah, node container, I think like it is not actually running. I mean, Mongo container. Yeah, MongoDB container is not running, right? Since I started only this container, so it is actually throwing. But the problem with this particular code is like, so I have like an empty Docker compose file, package.json file in my code, like, so that is actually creating the issue, I believe. Okay, so it got an issue with this MongoDB. And I'll also try something new, another thing. We'll do like, I thought of having this as SRC directory. I thought of having my code pointing to SRC directory. And like I'll run this. Okay, so now you can actually see this was actually working fine. So just minus G option, even though like I remove this minus C. So let me actually go inside this container. Let's see like when this image was actually created. So this is this image. So can someone tell me like why it is working now with the same code?
So internally, we install the npm MongoDB before going, like inside the container.
Yeah, so basically like what happened. So ideally like this is not supposed to work like um, so even the SRC directory, like I'm copying all the code from my current directory into the SRC directory, and I made this SRC directory as this working directory. Okay. So ideally, like this shouldn't actually work. But what I did, like in the previous step, what I did is like, so I went inside this container and then, so we were using this volume option previously also, right? So I went inside this container and I did like npm install, right? So that is when like this node modules folder is actually created inside the container. And since we were using these mod volumes, so my code, like, so these node modules code also got copied into my host machine. Okay. So now when I did the same command, like when I gave the same command, like I did like dot src. So this time, like all this code, like including node modules, everything got copied. So even these node modules, they got copied. Okay. there is an option. So something like you can actually provide internal volume mounting. Like, so I want to mount it from src slash. Okay. My compose file is not in the current. Sorry, Preeti, like in your like previous call, like we discussed about this internal mounting, right? So what is the command like which you gave?
Uh, I pasted my compose files.
Your compose file, okay. And can you also paste your Docker file?
Yeah.
So ideally, like this is not actually copying the code. Basically, if you see, so even like you're installing, this is your working directory, and you're doing like your npm install in the same directory, like src directory, right? Okay. So obviously, like your node modules will be present in this underscore node modules. Okay. So this doesn't actually make sense.
I think this is what you just did,
Yeah.
not to the commands, but in the file system.
Yeah. So obviously, like this doesn't actually um, doesn't do a volume mount. Like, so it is something like you're actually specifying this as a volume mount, and this will be pointing to somewhere in your host machine. So it's not something like what we thought, like, so in the call, like, so it is not something like you're actually adding these node modules into this directory. So since your working directory and then the directory where your node modules are actually copied, so it is the same, like it is actually working. Okay. So you're not actually mounting it. So this is not something like this mounting the stuff. So ideally, like what you need to do. So in case like if you are actually pointing it to a different location. So when we are actually doing volume, so it is better like so you can actually install these node modules on the fly. Like so in order to solve this, like what I can actually do is start. So so this is my startup.sh, right? What I'll try to do is, so I'll do like npm install over here. I have this package.json file. I'll do node. What is this file? App.js.
But in my case as well, I got the same error, like cannot find module in MongoDB. But after adding that volume, got work.
So we'll set that differently, but now let me actually go with a different approach. So overriding the startup.sh, I created a small shell file. Okay. So my intention is something like this. So I wanted to mount this particular my code, like which is present on my host machine, into a separate directory. And then I just wanted to install those node packages on the fly. So here, like I'm just trying to solve it something like this. So I'll be overwriting this option. Let me try this. Delete all these node modules that are pre-installed. So now you can actually see this, like, okay. So in this case, like what happened? So basically, like I'm just overriding this command like sh.startup.sh. So in my Docker file, I'm just copying this startup.sh. No, it is not actually copied. Like so, in my compose file, like I have this volume, right? So dot src, like I'm just copying all the code which is present on my host machine into this src directory. Okay. And then so this doesn't actually make sense, src directory. And then I'm just setting this working directory as src. So previously, like in my Docker file, I have this working directory as this particular folder, right? I'm just overwriting it to src. So after that, like I wanted to do a fresh copy of npm install in this particular folder, like src folder. And also, like I just wanted to execute this app.js file. Okay. For that, like what I did is like, so in my current directory, I already have this startup.sh file, right? So what I'm actually doing here is that So I'm just doing like npm install and then I'm starting this node app.js file. So this way, like if you see, I'm overriding everything. Like, so I'm not using this copy command, like the copy command from this image. And at the same time, like I'm also not using like this MongoDB install, and also I'm not using this image, right? So none of these are being used. So here, since I just wanted to use this volume, so I'm going in this approach. So in this case, like I can also, it is also not required for me to use this build at all, like, okay, the Docker file at all. Do you agree?
Yes.
No, can you go to the shell file?
Shell file, okay. So I'm just doing like npm install and node app.js file.
Okay. So before this step, all source code is copied to the mounted location.
Yeah,
In
so
Docker Compose.
so in a way, like I'm not using any of these things. So previously, like what I'm doing, I'm using this user src app, and then I'm just copying all the code into the image, and there I'm doing like npm install, and I'm doing like node app.js, like, okay. So this is like copying the code and then building the image with the container. But in my development environment, like I frequently change these volumes. I mean, so I need to frequently change this code. So in that scenario, like what I need to do, so I need to actually mount my current code location to some directory in the Docker container. So that is what I'm doing. Like I'm mounting this current directory to this src directory. So post mounting this volume, so I'm just setting this working directory to src folder. Okay. So now I wanted to execute again, like, so since in this folder, like I don't have these node modules installed, right? So I need to reinstall these node modules. So reinstall the node modules, and then I need to execute my code file. Okay. So that is the reason why, like, since I have like multiple commands, so I either like I can use something like this npm install ampersand node app.js, or I can also go with this sh file, shell script file. So either I can use this or I can also use this ampersand node app.js. Even this will work. So I got some other invalid tag name ampersand of factors. Tags do not have any characters or unique. So since this is like, yeah, so this is not actually working. So maybe since this is like an Alpine version, so this is not actually working, I believe. Like, or we can actually, I'll just get back to you on this, like why it is not working. Okay. But this is an option, like I can actually create a startup.sh file. So in this case, like actually there is no requirement. I mean, there is no need of using this custom image, like building the code, copying the code and all that stuff. So I can simply use this image directly and build my code like image, something like this. And then, so I can simply paste this. some issue with it. So I need to press search. So you can see that now it is actually running. So without having a custom container, like without using the Docker file, so I'm able to copy my code directly into this node server, like node image, and then use it directly over here, like something like this. So I'm mounting my code and then I'm executing like series of commands over here. So Prithvi, like, did you understand the importance of volumes like here?
Yeah, got it.
ఈ రోజు సెషన్ అంటే కొంచెం నాకే ఇది అనిపించింది అంటే ఇదేదో నా ప్రాక్టీస్ సెషన్ లాగా ఉంది.
It's okay.
Yeah, but at least like I felt like I learned something. So
Yeah.
So that Docker Compose run is the new one, Anna.
yeah,
So
so ఈ రోజు
run
నాకు అది you
Yeah.
it's like I'm able to convey that message to you guys. Okay.
One question. So
Yeah.
I think most of people suggest command instead of Docker file. So which one you suggest? I
Instead
think
of
even
Docker
logbox.
Compose, you mean to say?
No. So logbox using command like shell script to run nginx or copying code and everything. Even for PHP also, they have like you mentioned, image as a PHP image, and then they have shell script to do compose install and copying the code instead
You
of
mean in the Docker file?
yeah, instead of Docker. No, I think in startup.sh you have, right?
Okay, so in startup.sh, like they'll do all these installations.
Correct. Yeah. So so this is alternative for Docker file, right? Or
No,
similar
so
to
this is not an alternative for Docker file. Okay. So ideally, so what the main intention of the startup.sh file, like in not only startup.sh file, like any shell script, okay. So the main intention here is like, so if you want to execute like multiple commands, like if you have like a series of commands which you wanted them to be executed on startup, like when the container is actually starting, okay. So this is not, so
yeah.
just remember, like, so in the Docker file, any command, like, so when you give like any run command, run, and then you'll provide like a sequence of steps for install PHP, and then run so and so command. Okay, so if you're giving like all these commands, so these commands, so anything like which you specify using the run, okay, so they'll be executed when you're creating the image, actually. Okay, so whereas like if you want to execute any commands, so which are supposed to be executed like when you start the container, like not at the time of image creation, but at the time of like starting the container. So that is when like we'll go with this shell scripts. Okay, so you'll just provide like sh startup.sh. Okay, so this is an alternative way. So you need to copy the code, this shell script also into the Docker image file.
Got it. Yeah.
So this is not just an alternative for Docker file. So it is something like any commands like which you want to install, any commands like which you want to execute once the container starts, like on start of the container, like if you want to execute, so then you can actually provide something like this, either CMD or you can provide entry point.
Okay. Yeah.
So in this case, like what I'm actually doing in my case, so I have this startup.sh file. Let's assume that like I have some node code. Okay, so I have like a node code which is actually which I downloaded from the GitHub. So and I want to run this node code in the node environment. Okay, so I don't have node installed. So for example, like I want to run my code. Like, so I downloaded some code from GitHub and I want to test this code with Node 16. Okay. But on my local machine, I have like Node 12 installed on my host machine. So in that case, like I can actually, so in order to install the latest version, so either like, so it's like a complex process, right? Having two versions of Node installed on your machine and then, so it's a difficult process. Do you agree?
Yeah.
But if I wanted to test this code on Node version 16, 17, 15 on a decrement in something like that, okay? So in that case, like simply I can specify node image and then I'll copy all the code, like my current directory into the working directory, like into this code, into this SRC directory or some other directory. It's your wish, okay? Onto some directory, and then so you can execute like any, so what are the steps like which we do? Like we do npm install and then we do like npm start or something like that, right?
Yeah. So my point is here you're not using build to specify the Docker file to build, right? So to replace that, you mentioned image, the image section, and then to install or maybe to copy also you can use shell, right? That's what
Hmm.
I'm trying. So
So
not necessarily.
to copy, you want me to use, so to copy the shell, okay. uh, okay, so your intention is something like this, so it is something like this, so you wanted to have this docker file, okay, right? So the same docker file you want to use, so you also want to copy a shell file.
No, I don't want to use Docker file. I just want to use existing Docker image, and then to install or so
I mean, so
copy
when you want to use existing Docker image, like which image you wanted to use? So,
maybe Node or like Node or something.
so Node
Let's say
16 Alpine, something like this.
yeah. So here, so take a look. So here, you're
Mhm.
not mentioning build to build a Docker file. You're not specify that, right?
Yeah, I don't have like Docker. So I'm taking this node image from
Correct.
Docker.
So yeah, even copy also instead of copy, use volumes.
So instead of copy, I'm using volumes.
So just to install, you use startup.sh shell script.
Yeah, so I'm using like, since I have like multiple commands, I went with this option like startup.sh.
Yeah. So my point is here we don't need a Docker file, right? So
Yeah, so here
at
like,
this point, so we can
yeah,
all this together we can replace that. That's what I'm saying.
exactly. So even though I have the Docker file, if you remember previously, like I had this Docker file build context, and then so I was using this Docker file, right? But what I'm doing, like I'm not even using this working directory. So I'm copying the code into this working directory and I'm installing all these npm node modules into this directory. But end of the day, like I'm not using any content which is present in this working directory. So because I'm just pointing it to a new directory. So I'm mounting my code, source code, which is present on my source code into another directory like src directory. So, and I want to use this src directory, not this one. Okay. So in my src directory, I don't have node modules installed. So obviously, like I'm just doing what I'm doing, like I'm just in my I created a startup.sh and I'm doing like npm install. So another alternative, what you can actually do is, so you can again have this startup.sh file. Okay. So instead of doing like npm install, so I can do something like this. So I can again take this build option, and so instead of actually copying the code, like doing an npm install, fresh npm install, so I can use cp. So can someone tell me the command for copying files in Ubuntu, like cp? So which directory? I want to copy the node modules. Copy
CP -R capital R.
recursive mode, right? Hyphen capital R recursive mode. Uh, Inside this, have node underscore modules, node modules, right? So I create a directory mkdir node mod. Okay, so here, like if you remember the first issue like which we got, okay. So if you remember the first issue, so I had something like this. So I have like, I'm mounting this code like from the current directory, and I'll remove this. Okay. So my first issue is something like this. So if I don't use like startup.sh file, so let's see like what error we'll be getting. Like we'll be getting module not found, like MongoDB module not found. So MongoDB up. So you can see this cannot find this module MongoDB. So this is the error like which we are getting, right? So this is the initial problem which we are facing. So why did we get this error? So why did we get that error? Module not found.
You are copying first and then.
No, so here, like if you see, just ignore the startup.sh file. Like I'm not using that startup.sh file. So this is the code. Like, so I have this, I'm setting this working directory, and then I'm copying my JS file and I'm doing like npm install MongoDB. So the MongoDB node module, it gets installed in src app directory, right? So it gets installed in this src app directory, correct?
Yeah.
So, but here in my compose file, so I'm just pointing this to my host machine, the current directory. Like I'm pointing all this code. So all this code to this src directory in the container. And I'm also overriding this code. Like, so I'm setting this working directory as this src. Now, like when I execute like any command, like when this command gets executed, like node app.js, so it picks this file like app.js file, not from this working directory. Since I changed my working directory, it will try to pick the file from src folder. Okay. And it is trying to execute this app.js file, but ultimately, like we don't have this node modules present in this src directory, right? Because they are present in this user src app directory. So that is the reason why like we are getting this error, like node modules cannot find the module MongoDB. So this is the initial issue like which we got, right?
Even though I installed the same SRC directory node modules, still it is not same error it is coming kind of.
మళ్ళీ చెప్పు ఒకసారి తను.
నేను సేమ్ ఎస్ఆర్సి డైరెక్టరీలోనే ఎన్పిఎం ఇన్స్టాల్ చేశాను అన్న.
సేమ్ అంటే ఈ మౌంట్ చేసిన వాల్యూమ్ డైరెక్టరీలోనేనా?
అంటే మీరు అంటే డాకర్ ఫైల్లో పాత్ పెట్టారు కదా ఇప్పుడు, ఎస్ఆర్సి పాత్ పెట్టాను నేను, ఓన్లీ
యూజర్/src. యా, బట్ అదే చెప్తున్నాను కదా నీకు ఏంటంటే వాల్యూమ్స్
కాపీ అయిపోతుంది
when you are actually mounting the volume, so it is overwriting the existing folder. Okay. So you'll not see your initial directory, like so you'll be seeing all the code. Like I'll be seeing like whenever like I mount this volume src, so it is overwriting my directory which is present in the container with my code, like with my code which is present in the host directory. So this is the error. Like so, Prithvi, like you're clear, right? Why I'm getting this error, like MongoDB error.
Yeah.
Okay. So in order to solve this, so I know like my node modules, they are actually present in this directory, user src app directory. So somehow like I wanted to copy them. So I don't want to reinstall them, but I just wanted to copy them. So that is the reason why like what I'm trying to do is like, so I'm just doing like startup.sh file command. And inside the startup, I'm just overriding all this stuff. Like I'm just copying. Current directory. Okay, now let me try this. So the command is you should provide asset. So you can see now it is working, right? I'm getting this document. So in this case, like what did I do? So I took the help of this shell command to copy this node modules. ఓకే ప్రీతి నువ్వు అది వాల్యూమ్ అనుకున్నావు కదా అది వాల్యూమ్ కింద అది వర్క్ అవ్వదు అనుకుంటా ఒక్కసారి అది మళ్ళీ రీవిజిట్ చేస్తావు నువ్వు సో అది ఒకసారి నువ్వు మళ్ళీ చెక్ చేయు అది ఎందుకంటే సేమ్ డైరెక్టరీలో నీకు ఉంది కనుక నువ్వు అది వాల్యూమ్ కింద కన్సిడర్ చేసి ఉంటావు కానీ అది యాక్చువల్గా అదేం కాపీ చేయట్లేదు అది ఇంటర్నల్గా సేమ్ అక్కడికక్కడ రిఫర్ చేయట్లేదు అనుకుంటున్నా So is it clear like so why I'm using this sh file and then copying all those node modules and stuff?
So even though if we specify in Docker file, but Docker Compose will take it as a priority, right? It will override.
Yeah, so this is at the time of building the image. Okay. So anything like which you provide in the compose file or in the CLI, like then it will take the priority.
Okay.
So here like I'm overriding this command option. Okay, so I'm overriding this command option and also this working directory option. So I'm just overriding them. ఇప్పుడు వాల్యూమ్స్ యూజ్ అర్థమైందా సో బేసిక్గా అంటే ఏదైనా కోడ్ చేంజెస్ సో ఉన్నా సరే మనం అప్పటికి మళ్ళీ ఆ చేంజెస్ చేసి మళ్ళీ ఇమేజ్ బిల్డ్ చేయక్కర్లేకుండా సో యూ కెన్ సింప్లీ టేక్ దోస్ చేంజెస్ లైక్ ఎనీ చేంజెస్ like which you make in the host machine, so they'll be reflected.
Yeah, got it.
Okay, so ఈరోజు సెషన్ నాకు కూడా కొంచెం ప్రాక్టీస్ సెషన్ లాగా అయింది. At least like we were able to learn something new, right?
Yeah.
Yes. We need to practice rather than.
Yeah. Okay. So any questions from today's session? Like, so any doubts? Like, so I think, yeah, today, like I didn't explain anything new. So, but I was actually doing all the practice, trying different options.
Yeah, we'll also get to know all this.
So
No,
different
rather-
ways, like how we can actually.
rather giving daily sessions, these type of sessions will learn more. Like daily commands, people will come across if they have any issues, they can go through the documentation. But live debugging and these are all like we will get rarely, right?
Okay. Yeah. Others like any questions or any confusions? So there is another option which is called as depends. Okay. So this afternoon, like when I'm having a call with Preeti, so what is happening with her is like so we here like I provided three containers: Mongo Express, and then Pawan node, right? And if you see my code, so my Express initially like it is actually throwing an error. Like even now, I think like my Express is not actually running. Docker PS. So if you see my Express container, it is not running. Okay. And if you see the Docker Compose file, I have like Mongo Express, and then this is actually pointing to the Mongo container. So there is no issue in it. Like, so I obviously like, so this should work. But when I do local host 8081, it is not working. Okay. And if you realize, so I'm getting an issue like welcome to Mongo Express. So it is trying to start this Mongo Express and it is saying, so could not connect to database using the connection string MongoDB so and so. Okay. So behind the scenes, what is happening is, so if you see the log, so initially it started processing Mongo 1. This is my Mongo container. And immediately, like parallelly, it progressed to Mongo Express 1. Okay. So before this MongoDB container, it completely started. So this came into picture and it tried to start. Okay. So what is happening in this case? So since this Mongo is not completely started, So in the middle itself, like it tried to connect to MongoDB container. Okay, so and it is not able to find this particular MongoDB server. Okay, so that is the reason why like it is actually failing. So this is where like another small thing like so which I wanted to show you. So there is something called as depends. Okay, so I want my Mongo Express to start only once this MongoDB server completed is once started, right? So this is where like the depends it comes into picture. You can specify the order, like I can specify something like this. It's on. So which container it is depending on? So it is depending on MongoDB. Okay. So even my Power node, so this server is also depending on the MongoDB, right? Even I need to provide like depends. So this is to ensure that like these servers are coming into picture only once this dependency is solved, like once this particular container is up and running. Okay. So now the same command, like what I'll try to do is the difference syntax. So it is depends on. So now if you see like once this MongoDB is completely started, then only this comes into picture like Mongo Express. And you cannot actually guarantee the order. Like, okay, previously, like if you don't specify depends on, so you cannot already always guarantee. So sometimes this might actually work. Like, so by the time like this Mongo Express is actually created, so this container might be up and running. So if that is the case, so you'll not find any issues. So it will work. But if you want to make sure that like, so it is always consistent, so you can actually use this depends on flag, depends on property. Okay. So now I can actually browse through this. So this is actually running. Got it. So you might be, so when you're actually practicing, so you might actually face this issue. So that is where like the depends on comes into picture. Any questions? So if no questions, like we can actually wrap this session. So I took like good amount of time.